everyone. Welcome back to our remote version of Open. So, June is Pride Month, and the Reclaim Pride Coalition, known for mobilizing the gay community to come together, is holding its 2020 Queer Liberation March that will focus on Black lives and the issues of economic justice, sexism, police brutality, and that's just to name a few within this country. Joining us to tell us more about this upcoming march, we welcome Reclaim Pride Coalition organizer, co-founder J.W. Walker. Hello, Senor Walker.
Hello, Rhina. Thank you very much for having me on and giving us some space.
It's so fascinating that we are just reliving a certain era, and I use the term fascinating because what is coming into fruition here is the history behind parades even being formed, right? Because they originally began as marches, turned into these festivities, and now have reverted back to being marches.
Exactly. And that was the purpose of the Queer Liberation March. The first one of which was last year, was just a disappointment in the lack of a true political core to the annual Heritage of Pride parade. When it started out as this amazing March for Liberation, had devolved into this super corporate, super police run, over barricaded dance party that lasted for far too long and didn't center any of the major issues that the queer community in all the queer communities in all of our many facets were facing. And that's why we held last year's march, because it needed to be done.
Well, was it 2019 or 2018?
Well, 2018, we were formed. The Reclaim Pride Coalition was formed, but we were still trying to operate within the Heritage of Pride parade. That ended up being just a horrible debacle, the way that the Heritage of Pride parade treated those of us who were really there from an activist standpoint. So we resolved that for the 50th anniversary of Stonewall in 2019, that we would hold our own march. That would be a political march that wouldn't have floats, that wouldn't have police marching with us, that wouldn't have barricades everywhere, and that would have no corporate involvement whatsoever. And that's what we did last year, and we ended up with an estimated 45,000 people participating. So this year, we were going at it again, then COVID hit. And we decided, okay, we'll do something virtual, which is what everybody decided to do when COVID hit.
Right.
But then after Mr. Floyd was murdered in front of all of our eyes, and all of our members that didn't have severe health issues were out every single day marching in the streets with this amazing flashpoint moment of people just demanding justice.
Right.
That, after that first weekend of protests, we all got back together in our little subcommittee meetings and finally our general meeting, and we're unanimous that we just had to come out into the street and march, and that we had to center the movement for Black lives and this fight against police brutality, which is one of those places where all queer communities and all Black communities have a great deal of intersection. The fact that we've been under attack by law enforcement for decades and decades.
Well, don't you find it interesting how it's all the communities and then the police militant operations? Because if you think about it, it's kind of everybody and then them. And so the fact that everybody has chosen,
that's really it.
It really is, right? And we just had a guest previous to this segment that was just sharing her knowledge, dropping her knowledge about being involved 50 years ago, and how this is almost like this is history repeating itself as we speak.
It really is. I mean, it's astounding, and it was one of those perfect storm moments, right? Because it was everything I had to sort of work up to this moment. It was almost 3.5 years of fatigue of the idiocy and incompetence of Donald Trump and the resistance that grew in that wake. And then we had this overwhelming health epidemic that locked everybody down and just reinforced all of our distrust in all of our governmental and societal systems, from the healthcare system to the government, etc. And then we had just sort of, data point after data point of the real lives of folks like Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, being murdered and being hushed up in the early days of the COVID epidemic, and finally coming to light. And it's almost perfect that they were hushed up in February and March, and that they didn't come to light until May, because then we had that, then we had the Karen explosion, and then we had Mr. Floyd being murdered in front of all of our eyes for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And that was that final straw that broke under all of this weight. And the world exploded, it felt like.
Right. And we've been protesting ever since. And so now here comes this community to come in again, right? Because there was a big protest just this past Sunday. But now this particular protest is going to encompass everything. So what should people expect, and who are you expecting to participate in this protest?
We always want to manage expectations. We're pretty certain that the broader swath of LGBTQ communities are going to participate, in those who don't have concerns about their own health. But we want this march to be as broad as possible. It is the Queer Liberation March. That's the starting point. But we want this to be a march for everyone who believes in justice, who believes in overcoming the systemic oppression that everyone's faced. People aren't talking about the fact that there was a 9-year period that was studied, and there were several hundred instances of women being raped by police officers. And it's, that's something that people aren't really talking about. The police system in this country oppresses everyone who isn't a straight, white, Christian male of means. Everyone else is fodder for them.
Right.
And I want everybody out in this march.
Yes. And in addition to that, we want everybody to get out there and vote and have their voices heard, and to fill out their census.
Yes, absolutely. So important, especially in all of our cities.
Right. And so in closing, the details of the march, I know, are going to be on Sunday, June 28th. I know it starts at 1. You're referring everybody to the website for right now, as you're still figuring out exactly how it is that this is going to flow, right?
Exactly. We're still meeting and having consultations with lots of different community groups, led by Black people, both queer groups and groups that aren't explicitly queer. But everything is going to be revealed very shortly in terms of everything that we're doing.
Got it. Well, we thank you for bringing it here to our viewers. We thank you for the work that you're doing. And most importantly, it's really refreshing to just see everybody galvanized to make sure that our voices are heard, united in spite of our differences.
All together now, and hold that line. Thank you so much, Rhina.
Oh, thank you. All right. Once again, you guys, 2020 Queer Liberation March is taking place on Sunday, June 28th, and that's starting at 1. For more information, you can visit reclaimpridegyc.org. We have to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We have an artist who's going to share some of his artwork that's related to protest. So don't go anywhere.